You do not become attractive at 50 by accident, and you do not lose it at 60 simply because time passed. Attractiveness at this stage of life has almost nothing to do with what you see in the mirror. It has everything to do with how you carry what you have lived through. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. Think about the people you genuinely admire, not the ones you envy, not the ones with the loudest voices in the room, but the ones whose presence you actually feel, the ones you want to sit next to at dinner, the ones who make you feel somehow that the world is a little more manageable after talking to them. What do they have? What is that quality? You might be thinking right now that it is confidence, or success, or good looks that have held up well over the decades. But if you look more carefully, you will notice something else, something quieter, something that has nothing to do with what they own or how they look, and everything to do with how they think and how they live. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius, who led the most powerful empire on earth and still found time to wrestle with his own weakness and mediocrity in private, wrote this in his journal: "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That is not a motivational poster. That is a man reminding himself every morning that the work is internal, that the quality of your presence in the world flows entirely from the quality of your inner life. And here is what makes this so relevant to you right now. The things that make a person genuinely magnetic, genuinely attractive in the deepest sense of that word, are not things you acquire. They are things you practice daily, often without realizing it. You are already doing some of them, but you may not be doing them with intention. And intention is exactly what transforms a habit into a strength. This is not a list of tricks. It is not about how to walk into a room or what to say at a party. This is about 10 things you are likely already doing in your daily life that, when understood through a Stoic lens, reveal something important. That the life you have built, with all its difficulty and all its accumulated wisdom, is making you more attractive than you think. Not more attractive in the way a 20-year-old understands the word, more attractive in the way that actually matters, in the way that draws people toward you, not because of how you look, but because of who you are when no one is watching. Let us begin. The first thing you do daily that makes you more attractive than you think is that you have stopped pretending. Somewhere in your 40s or 50s, most people quietly drop the performance. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually the exhausting work of being who others expect you to be becomes less interesting than simply being who you are. You stop laughing at jokes you do not find funny. You stop agreeing with opinions that feel wrong to you. You stop dressing, speaking, and behaving in ways designed to impress people whose approval you no longer actually need. Epictetus called this the beginning of philosophy. Not reading books, not attending lectures, but the moment a person stops being controlled by the opinions of others and begins living according to their own judgment. He wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." What he meant was simple. The moment you stop managing your image, you become real. And real people, in a world full of performance, are extraordinarily rare. People feel this in you. They may not be able to name it, but they feel it. There is a relaxation that happens in the presence of someone who is not trying to be anything other than what they are. It is one of the most attractive qualities a human being can possess, and it tends to arrive only after decades of living. The second thing is that you listen differently now. Young people hear, older people listen. This is not a small distinction. When you have lived long enough to understand that you do not have all the answers, that your certainties have been wrong before and will be wrong again, something changes in the way you receive other people. You become less interested in responding and more interested in understanding. You ask better questions. You sit with silence more comfortably. You are not waiting for your turn to speak. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that he was grateful to his teachers for showing him that it was possible to live in a palace without needing to be seen living in a palace. What he was describing, in part, was this quality of genuine attention, of being present with another person, not because it serves you, but because they are worth your full presence. In daily life this looks simple. It is the phone placed face down on the table. It is the question asked a second time, slightly differently, because you actually want to understand the answer. It is the pause before you speak, not because you are searching for the right words, but because you are still taking in what was just said to you. That quality draws people toward you, like warmth draws them toward a fire on a cold evening. They do not always know why they want to be in your company, but you do. The third thing you do daily that makes you more attractive than you think is that you have developed a relationship with discomfort. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because life has taught you, repeatedly and without apology, that growth does not live on the comfortable side of things. You have sat with grief. You have navigated loss. You have made difficult decisions that cost you something real, and you are still here. That history is written into the way you move through the world, and people sense it even when they cannot articulate it. Seneca wrote, "It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what is worth fearing and what is not." This is precisely what experience gives you, a calibrated sense of what actually matters. A younger person might panic over a difficult conversation, a professional setback, a moment of public embarrassment. You have learned, through living, that most of what terrifies people in their 30s resolves itself by their 50s. That knowledge is not cynicism, it is stability, and stability, in a world of constant noise and anxiety, is deeply, genuinely attractive. You might be thinking right now that this sounds like something you simply endured, rather than something you chose. And that is fair, but here is the Stoic point. The choice is not whether difficulty comes, it always comes. The choice is what you do with it afterward, whether you let it harden you into bitterness or refine you into depth. Most people looking at you from the outside do not see the difficulty, they see the depth, and depth is magnetic. The fourth daily thing is simpler than you might expect. You do things without needing credit for them. At some point, the need to be seen doing good things fades. You help a neighbor not because you want them to mention it to someone else. You give your time, your attention, your knowledge, not to build a reputation, but because it is the right use of what you have. This is what the Stoics called acting according to virtue, with no attachment to the outcome or the recognition. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about other people. Look within." And yet, paradoxically, the person who has genuinely stopped performing goodness for an audience becomes one of the most compelling people in any room. Because everyone else can feel the absence of agenda. The absence of agenda is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily attractive. In practical daily terms, this looks like the colleague who solves a problem quietly and moves on. The friend who shows up with food after a loss without waiting to be asked. The person who gives an honest answer even when a flattering one would have been easier and safer. These are not grand gestures. They are small, daily choices made without an audience, and they accumulate over years and decades into a kind of character that other people find themselves drawn to without fully understanding why. The fifth thing is that you have learned to disagree without destroying. This is rarer than it sounds. In a world where every disagreement has become a declaration of war, where people mistake volume for conviction and aggression for strength, the person who can hold a firm position calmly and respectfully stands out immediately. You have had enough arguments in your life to know which ones were worth having and which ones left everyone smaller than before. That knowledge has given you a kind of measured quality in conversation that younger people often mistake for indifference. It is not indifference, it is discipline. Epictetus was direct about this. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. What he was pointing to is something you have likely already discovered through experience. The person who remains steady when others escalate does not lose the argument. They win something more important. They retain their dignity, and they keep the other person's respect, even when the other person would never admit it out loud. In daily life, this shows up in small moments. The family dinner where a topic becomes heated, and you choose your words carefully rather than reaching for the most cutting ones available. The meeting where you disagree with a decision and say so clearly without making it personal. The conversation where you simply say, "I see it differently," and leave space for that difference to exist without needing to be resolved immediately. That quality of measured, grounded disagreement signals something profound to the people around you. It signals that you are not governed by your emotions, and a person who is not governed by their emotions is a person others instinctively trust. The 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th things you do daily could each fill their own conversation. You maintain routines that ground you. You speak about people who are absent with the same care you would use if they were present. You acknowledge when you are wrong without making it a performance of humility. You find genuine interest in things outside yourself. And you carry your regrets without being defined by them. Each of these, taken alone, is a small thing. Together, they form something the Stoics would recognize immediately. They form character. And character, as Heraclius observed long before the Stoics formalized it into philosophy, is destiny. Now here is the practice, not a list of tasks. Just one question to carry with you today. At the end of this day, when the noise has quieted and you have a moment to yourself, ask this: did I act today in a way that I would respect if I watched myself from the outside? Not perfectly, not heroically, simply, honestly, with integrity. That single question, asked daily and answered honestly, is the entire practice. It is what Marcus Aurelius was doing every morning in those private journals that were never meant to be read by anyone else. He was holding himself accountable not to the empire, not to history, but to his own standard of what a good person does with the hours they are given. That daily reckoning is not a burden. It is, quietly, one of the most attractive things a person can do with their time. Here is what no one tells you about attractiveness at this stage of life. It does not diminish with age, it deepens, but only if you have done the work. Only if you have chosen, day after day, in small and unremarkable moments that no one was watching, to live with intention. To be honest when dishonesty would have been easier. To stay calm when chaos was available. To show up fully for people who needed your presence rather than your performance. You might be thinking right now that this sounds like a description of someone else. Someone more disciplined, more composed, more together than you feel on most mornings. But that is precisely the point. Attractiveness of this kind is not a destination you arrive at. It is a direction you move in. Every day, imperfectly, with full knowledge of your own contradictions and limitations. Seneca wrote, near the end of his life, something that has stayed with readers for 2,000 years. Retire into yourself as much as you can. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. He was not describing isolation. He was describing the deep, quiet work of becoming someone worth being around. Not for the approval it generates, not for the reputation it builds, but because a life lived with that quality of attention and intention is simply a better life, fuller, more honest, more free. The 10 things we have walked through today are not techniques, they are symptoms. Symptoms of a person who has chosen, repeatedly and without fanfare, to take their own character seriously. To treat each ordinary day as the material from which something meaningful can be made. That choice, made daily, is what makes you more attractive than you think. Not to everyone, not loudly, but to the people who matter, in the moments that count, in the ways that last. And that, in the end, is more than enough.